Alright, so, buckle up, because this is gonna be a long one. I've been holding this in for way too long, and I think it's time to just let it all out. This is the story of how my family betrayed me in the worst way possible, and how I'm still trying to pick up the pieces. My name's Jessica, but everyone calls me Jess. I'm 27, living in a small town in Ohio, and up until a year ago, I thought I had the perfect life. I mean, sure, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, but I had a decent job, a boyfriend who I thought loved me, and a family that I trusted with my life. Yeah, that last part? That's where it all went to hell. It all started with my older sister, Emily. She's 2 years older than me, and we've always been close. Like, best friends close. We'd tell each other everything, our dreams, our fears, even the stupidest little details about our day. She was my rock, the one person I thought would never let me down. Then there's my mom. She's always been a bit overbearing, but I figured that's just what moms do, right? She's the kind of person who's always in your business, but you forgive her because, well, she's your mom. And my dad? He's the quiet type, always in the background, but I never doubted that he loved me. So, fast forward to last summer. I was dating this guy, Ryan. We'd been together for about 3 years, and I thought we were solid. He was charming, funny, and he got along great with my family, especially Emily. They'd always joke around together, and I thought it was cute. Like, oh, look how well my sister and my boyfriend get along. Yeah, I was an idiot. One night, Ryan and I got into this huge fight. I don't even remember what it was about, something stupid, probably. But it was bad enough that he stormed out and didn't come back that night. I was upset, obviously, so I called Emily. She came over, listened to me cry, and told me everything would be okay. She even stayed the night to keep me company. The next morning, Ryan still hadn't come back, and I was starting to get worried. I tried calling him, but he didn't pick up. That's when Emily suggested we go look for him. She said she had a feeling he might be at this bar he liked to go to. I thought it was weird that she knew that, but I didn't question it. We got to the bar, and sure enough, Ryan's car was in the parking lot. But when we walked in, I immediately wished we hadn't. There he was, sitting at the bar, laughing with some girl. And not just any girl, it was Emily's best friend, Sarah. I was furious. I marched over there, ready to give Ryan a piece of my mind, but before I could say anything, Emily grabbed my arm and pulled me back. She told me to calm down, that it wasn't what it looked like. But I wasn't having it. I demanded to know what was going on, and that's when Ryan dropped the bomb. He told me he was done with me, that he'd been seeing Sarah for months. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, Emily just stood there, not saying a word. I looked at her, waiting for her to defend me, to tell Ryan he was a piece of crap, but she didn't. Instead, she looked away, like she was ashamed. That's when it hit me. Emily knew. She'd known the whole time. And not only had she kept it from me, but she'd been covering for Ryan. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My own sister had betrayed me. I ran out of the bar, tears streaming down my face. Emily followed me, trying to explain, but I didn't want to hear it. I told her to leave me alone, that I never wanted to see her again. And then I went home, packed my stuff, and left. I didn't talk to Emily for weeks after that. I couldn't even look at her without feeling sick to my stomach. But as bad as that was, it was nothing compared to what came next. After the whole Ryan and Sarah fiasco, I thought things couldn't get worse. I mean, my boyfriend cheated on me with my sister's best friend, and my sister knew about it the whole time. That's pretty much rock bottom, right? Wrong. Because what happened next made me realize that betrayal doesn't just come from one person, it can come from the people you least expect. I moved in with a friend for a while, trying to figure out my next steps. I was hurt, angry, and honestly, I didn't know who to trust anymore. My parents kept calling me, asking me to come home, but I couldn't face them. Every time I thought about going back, I'd remember Emily's face at the bar, how she didn't even try to defend me. It was like a knife to the heart. Then, one day, my mom showed up at my friend's house. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping, and she begged me to come home. She said we needed to talk, that there were things I didn't understand. I didn't want to go, but part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, my family could fix this. So, I went back. And that's when everything fell apart. We sat down in the living room, me, my mom, my dad, and Emily. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My mom started talking, and at first, it was just the usual stuff, how much they loved me, how they wanted me to be happy. But then she dropped the bomb. "Jess," she said, "there's something you need to know about Ryan." I froze. What else could there possibly be? He cheated on me, he lied to me, what more was there? That's when Emily spoke up. "Jess, Ryan didn't just cheat on you with Sarah. He's been seeing someone else, too." I felt like the room was spinning. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily looked at my mom, then back at me. "Mom." I swear, for a second, I thought I'd misheard her. "What?" "Ryan's been seeing Mom," Emily said, her voice breaking. I just stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to tell me it was some kind of sick joke. But she didn't. And neither did my mom. "It's true," my mom said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Jess. I never meant for this to happen." I felt like I was going to throw up. My mom? My mom had been sleeping with my boyfriend? How could she do that to me? How could any of them do that to me? I looked at my dad, waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to yell at my mom for what she'd done. But he just sat there, staring at the floor, like he was ashamed. "Dad?" I said, my voice shaking. "Did you know about this?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The look on his face said it all. I felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. My mom had betrayed me. My dad had known about it and didn't say anything. And Emily? She'd known the whole time and didn't tell me. I stood up, my hands trembling. "How could you?" I said, looking at each of them. "How could you do this to me?" No one answered. They just sat there, looking at me like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran out of the house, got in my car, and drove. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I had to get away from them. That was 6 months ago. I haven't spoken to my family since. I moved to a new city, got a new job, and I'm trying to start over. But some days, it feels like I'll never be able to trust anyone again. I don't know if I'll ever forgive them. I don't know if I even want to. All I know is that I'm done with their lies, their secrets, and their betrayal. And as for Ryan? Let's just say karma's a bitch. After I left my family's house that day, I didn't look back. I drove for hours, my mind racing, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't have a destination in mind, I just needed to get as far away from them as possible. Eventually, I ended up in a small town a few states over. I checked into a cheap motel, collapsed on the bed, and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. The next few weeks were a blur. I called my boss and quit my job over the phone. I didn't give a reason, I just said I couldn't come back. I didn't care about the consequences. I needed a fresh start, and that meant leaving everything behind, including the life I'd built in Ohio. I found a waitressing job at a diner in the new town. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and it kept me busy. The people there were nice enough, but I kept to myself. I wasn't ready to let anyone in, not after what had happened. Then, one day, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me I should. "Jess?" It was Emily. I almost hung up right then and there, but something stopped me. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold. I need to talk to you," she said. "Please." I didn't say anything for a long time. Part of me wanted to tell her to go to hell, but another part of me was curious. What could she possibly have to say that would make any of this better? "Fine," I said finally. "But you've got 5 minutes." She took a deep breath. "Jess, I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you." I was just scared. "Scared of what?" I asked, my voice rising. "Scared of telling me the truth? Scared of standing up for me? Scared of losing you," she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to tell you, Jess. I didn't know how to make it right. And by the time I realized how bad it had gotten, it was too late. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her, but the other part of me was still so angry. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. And that I love you. I hung up the phone. I didn't know what else to do. Over the next few weeks, Emily kept calling. I didn't answer every time, but sometimes I did. And slowly, against my better judgment, I started to listen. She told me about how she'd found out about Ryan and our mom, how she'd tried to confront them but they'd threatened to cut her off if she told me. She said she'd been trying to protect me, but now she realized she'd only made things worse. I didn't know if I believed her, but I couldn't deny that part of me missed her. She was my sister, after all. Then, one day, I got a letter in the mail. It was from my dad. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a handwritten note. Jess. I know I failed you as a father, and I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you, but I was too weak. I let your mother's mistakes become my own, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I love you. And if you ever need anything, I'm here. Dad. I cried when I read it. I didn't want to, but I couldn't help it. Things are still complicated. I'm not ready to forgive my family, but I'm starting to think that maybe, someday, I can. For now, I'm focusing on myself, on healing, on moving forward, and on building a life that's mine and mine alone. But I know one thing for sure, I'll never let anyone hurt me like that again. The letter from my dad shook me more than I wanted to admit. It was the first time in months that I felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a tiny sliver of hope for some kind of reconciliation. But hope is a dangerous thing, and I wasn't ready to let it take root. Not yet. I kept working at the diner, keeping my head down and my walls up. The regulars started to recognize me, and a few even tried to strike up conversations. There was this one guy, Mark, who came in every morning for coffee and a stack of pancakes. He was around my age, with a kind smile and a laid-back vibe. He'd try to make small talk, but I kept it short and polite. I wasn't ready to let anyone in. Meanwhile, Emily kept calling. At first, it was once a week, then twice, then almost every other day. She'd leave voicemails when I didn't pick up, her voice cracking as she apologized over and over. She told me she was in therapy, trying to work through her guilt and figure out how to be a better sister. She even said she'd cut ties with Ryan and Sarah completely. I just want you to know that I'm trying, Jess, she said in one of her messages. I know I messed up, but I'm doing everything I can to make it right. I miss you so much. I didn't call her back, but I didn't delete the messages either. Then, one night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Jess? It's Sarah. My stomach dropped. Sarah. The girl who'd been sleeping with Ryan behind my back. The girl who'd helped destroy my life. What do you want? I snapped, my voice trembling with anger. I need to talk to you, she said. It's about Ryan. I almost hung up. I didn't want to hear his name, let alone anything about him. But something in her voice made me pause. What about him? I asked, my tone icy. He's been lying to you, Jess. To all of us. There's stuff you don't know, stuff I didn't even know until recently. I think you need to hear it. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her to go to hell, but another part of me was curious. What could she possibly have to say that would make any of this worse? Fine, I said finally. But this better be good. We met at a coffee shop the next day. Sarah looked different, thinner, paler, like she hadn't been sleeping. She ordered a coffee and sat down across from me, her hands shaking as she wrapped them around the cup. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know the truth. I didn't say anything. I just waited for her to continue. Ryan, he's not who you think he is, she said. He's been manipulating all of us. Me, Emily, your mom, he's been playing us against each other this whole time. I felt like the room was spinning. What are you talking about? Sarah took a deep breath. He's been lying to everyone, Jess. He told me he was going to leave you for me, but then he turned around and told your mom the same thing. He's been playing us all, trying to see how far he could push us. And when Emily found out, he threatened to ruin her life if she told you. I felt like I was going to throw up. Why are you telling me this now? Because I can't live with it anymore, she said, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know how bad it was until it was too late. And I need you to know that I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her she was just as guilty as Ryan. But another part of me felt relieved. Like I finally had some kind of explanation for why everything had gone so wrong. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said finally. But, thank you for telling me. Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. I understand. I needed you to know the truth. We sat there in silence for a while, neither of us knowing what to say. Finally, I stood up to leave. Jess? Sarah said as I turned to go. I looked back at her. I hope you can find a way to be happy again, she said. You deserve it. I didn't say anything. I just walked out the door, my mind racing. The truth didn't make everything better, but it did help me understand. Ryan wasn't just a cheater, he was a manipulator, a liar, and a master of chaos. And while that didn't excuse what my family had done, it did help me see that maybe, just maybe, they weren't entirely to blame. But I wasn't ready to forgive them. Not yet. The truth about Ryan was like a weight lifted off my shoulders, but it didn't erase the pain. If anything, it made me angrier, angry at him for manipulating everyone, angry at my family for falling for it, and angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. But anger can only carry you so far. Eventually, you have to decide whether to let it consume you or use it to rebuild. I chose to rebuild. It wasn't easy. I spent months in therapy, unpacking everything that had happened and trying to make sense of it. I learned to set boundaries, to prioritize my own well-being, and to recognize the red flags I'd ignored for so long. It was hard work, but it was worth it. Emily kept reaching out, and slowly, I started to let her back in. We didn't talk about Ryan or my mom, not at first. We started small, with texts about stupid things like TV shows and memes. It was awkward at first, but over time, it started to feel normal again. Then, one day, she asked if she could visit. I hesitated, but I said yes. When she showed up at my door, it was like seeing a ghost. She looked different, older, wiser, like she'd been through hell and back. We hugged, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I was home. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. And then, finally, we talked about what had happened. I'm so sorry, Jess, she said, tears streaming down her face. I should have told you the truth. I should have stood up for you. I was just so scared of losing you. I know, I said, my voice shaking. And I'm still mad at you. But I think I'm ready to start forgiving you. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a start. As for my mom and dad, it took longer. My mom tried to reach out a few times, but I wasn't ready to talk to her. I needed time to process everything, to figure out if I could ever trust her again. My dad, on the other hand, kept sending letters. They were short and simple, but they meant the world to me. He didn't make excuses or try to justify what had happened. He just told me he loved me and that he was proud of me. Eventually, I wrote him back. Dad. I'm not ready to come home yet, but I'm getting there. Thank you for not giving up on me. Love, Jess. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As for Ryan, I haven't seen or heard from him since I left Ohio. From what I've heard, he's still the same manipulative, selfish person he's always been. But I don't care anymore. He doesn't have power over me, and he never will again. I'm still a work in progress. Some days are harder than others, but I'm learning to take it one step at a time. I've started to make new friends, to build a life that's mine and mine alone. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm going to be okay. The road to healing isn't easy, but it's worth it. And while I'll never forget what happened, I'm finally starting to move forward. Because at the end of the day, I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be. And no one, not Ryan, not my family, not anyone, can take that away from me. The end.